astrology is kind of like a caffeine-free drink. There's no instant boost, but it's rather a long-term strategy. A lot of people nowadays are looking for this quick fix, for something that has to happen quick. They want to have this quick win. Keep marketing your promise. If you take these 5 steps, you will get to 6 figures in 6 months. We're so hungry for this instant gratification. Astrology really is the opposite.
Welcome to the Astrology as a Strategy podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Panassi. I'm on a mission to help you amplify your influence so you can free up time to spend with your family while increasing your revenue. I'm an astrologer, business mentor, an adventure seeker, and a proud mama of 3 kids. Think of this podcast as your shortcut to more joy and ease in your business. Running a business is joyful, and when you're not having fun, you haven't cracked the code yet, but that's about to change. I share practical and short tools how to use astrology in your business and life. So let's get started on using your energy strategically to make a bigger impact, have more free time, and grow your wealth.
Some days I wish I would still drink coffee. You know those days when your energy is low, you feel unmotivated. I could really use a boost of energy. But you know what? I know that caffeine is not going to solve the underlying issue. Caffeine really is a temporary solution. And before, I used caffeine as a way to ignore my body's signals and my signals to rest. You know, my heart would race, I would get these sweaty palms, I would get dizzy. At the same time, it was something that I felt I needed and that I couldn't go without. Now, astrology is kind of like a caffeine-free drink. There's no instant boost, but it's rather a long-term strategy. A lot of people nowadays are looking for this quick fix, for something that has to happen quick. They want to have this quick win. Keep marketing your promise. If you take these 5 steps, you will get to 6 figures in 6 months. We're so hungry for this instant gratification. Astrology really is the opposite. Astrology doesn't fix the problems for you, but it rather shows you where your attention is needed. It gives you a peek into the best ways to use your energy, the most effortless approach, which is what we like. If we're looking for this easy, quick way, instead of looking for quick as in time-wise quick, let's look for a way that is the least effort for you. Now you still have to show up and do the work, but there will be a lot less tension and will be in a much shorter time frame. So honestly, astrology isn't a magic bullet filled with espresso. I like to compare it with a cold glass of fizzy kombucha. It energizes you by taking care of the foundation. And when you drink kombucha, it helps your digestive tract. It helps you with your immune system. Now, I'm not making any health claims, but generally, kombucha is a lot healthier than coffee is. So that's why I compare astrology with a kombucha, because you need a strong foundation in your business. I've seen business owners who have run their business for many years, and yet they're lacking a really good, solid foundation. And with a solid foundation, I don't just mean to have all the systems in place, to have all of the right people in the right places. I'm actually talking about going back to the basics, to your foundation, your personal foundation. Especially if you are your brand, if you're a personal brand, then you need to be healthy. You need to have good boundaries. You have to know what you're good at and what you're not. And most people have taken these personality tests, so they're quite familiar with their talents and what they can do. But at the same time, there's a deeper layer underneath that if you tune into that layer, you will be able to do business from a very different level. You'll be able to show up in a very different way. And astrology is here to reinforce your foundation. Now, most people know exactly what they're good at, and they naturally gravitate towards what feels effortless. And that is a really good thing. We are taught that when something is effortless, is not worth it. We don't get the gratification out of it because we didn't hustle, we didn't work hard. I come across many female entrepreneurs who kind of feel like it's mandatory to struggle or to hustle, and they have a hard time to receive, to understand that business can be fun and easy. And yes, you still have to show up and do the work. It's not like things will magically fly to you, but at the same time, if you tune into your deeper layers and your deeper layers of trust, you will run your business in a completely different way. The same as what had happened with me and my personal journey with caffeine. I love a good cup of coffee. I love the smell of it. And I have stopped drinking coffee, I think 4 times in the past already. But every time the smell really gets me and I start drinking again. About 3 years ago, I had 3, 4, 5 cups of coffee a day because I loved it so much. And it was kind of this automatic response that I kept drinking it. After a massive migraine attack that lasted for 3 days, I literally had to call my parents to pick up the kids. My husband was at work, so I couldn't do anything. I literally laid in bed. I was so sick. And that time I knew my body really doesn't agree with caffeine. I would get so sick and get extreme headaches. And I started to notice that I started to depend on it. I needed the coffee to function. I needed it in order to feel fresh and alert. And quite frankly, I think it's sad that we normalize the need for caffeine in order to function. There's nothing wrong with enjoying a cup of coffee. But the fact that we think it's normal that we need coffee in the morning to actually be able to show up to work, to actually be able to turn on our computers and work. And it's not just that we normalize the need for caffeine. We also need to normalize that we need a quick fix in our business. Sometimes things can be fixed quickly, yes. But in general, if you want to build a long-lasting, successful business, it's not going to come from quick fixes. It is going to come from a long-term strategy. And astrology is not a quick fix. Astrology is here to build a lasting foundation. One of the things I like to compare it with as well is the new and the full moons. A lot of people that are into astrology, they are aware of the new moons and the full moons. They set their intention on the new moon. They release on the full moon. But yet they don't see the actual result. And this doesn't go into the manifestation because that's a whole topic in and of itself. But what I want you to realize is that the new and the full moons aren't standalone events. They are cycles that link to other cycles. So for instance, one lunar cycle starts with a new moon. Then the full moon is the peak and then the next lunar cycle starts again. But around 6 months for a full moon, we had a new moon in that same sign. So you already have this about 6 month cycle, roughly, it's not exactly, where the new moon links into the full moon 6 months later. And then 6 months after that, we have the new moon in the same sign again. So it kind of comes full circle. So those are only the new and the full moons. Every single planet has its own cycle. One of the most strongly present cycles, especially in our business, is what Saturn is doing. Saturn takes about 28 to 29 years to go around and come to the same place where it was at your birth. Probably when you're listening to this and I ask you to think about what you were doing when you were 28, 29 years old, you probably know that something was happening in your life. So for me personally, when I was 29, I had a miscarriage. And for me, that was a very dark, very emotional time, as well as I was ignoring all the signals that Saturn was telling me. So Saturn is the planet that teaches us about karma. It teaches us about structures, about discipline. Saturn is quite a direct communicator. When you're not living in alignment, Saturn will tell you. And at that time, when I had my miscarriage, I definitely wasn't living in alignment. And Saturn was just telling me that in a very hard way. And it took me quite a few years to really get over that. When we look at Saturn, you can divide it in 7-year cycles. We all heard about the 7-year itch. That's a real thing because Saturn is divided in 7-year cycles. Every time when Saturn makes an aspect to your natal Saturn, there is some tension or there's inspiration. There is some kind of shift happening. The first one, what I mentioned, is most of us are aware what happened when we were 28, 29. That was like a pivotal point because that's your Saturn return. But also 7 years later, so around the mark of 35, 36, that's what we call the first quarter square. That's a time where there might be some friction again. Well, you starting to look at the systems that you have in your life, you look at where your life is going, and this is a real beautiful time to kind of course correct. Where are you going? What is needed? Is this still in alignment with your true self? Again, this is not a quick fix. This is not something that exactly, let's say, between your 35th and 36th birthday, that's like the time where exactly, yes, that day you need to take action. This is one of those longer cycles. This is something I talk about, the foundation. Saturn is really a beautiful foundation to know where you stand in your business. So if you're listening and you're around 35, 36 years old, chances are that you are having your Saturn square Saturn. This is a beautiful opportunity for you to look at how am I moving forward? Is there a way to course correct? Because we all know that if we don't course correct down the road, we end up somewhere completely different. But if we course correct now, we are able to come back to what our desire is. And this is not something that you do overnight. This is not like you take out a journal, you journal on it, and then the next day you do it. Very different from the lunar cycle, which is just 29 and a half days. This is almost 29 years. So there's a huge difference there. If you're around 42, 43, you will have your Saturn opposition as well as your Uranus opposition. This is kind of the pre-midlife crisis. And it's actually sad that we call it a crisis because there's not enough space for people to actually explore where they want to go. Now, a lot of times people call this a crisis because they make decisions to go into a completely different direction. Now, for most people, because they're so ingrained that this is the path that they chose, this is where they have to stay, it's either a good job or it's your business is going well, so stay where you are because it's stable and it's secure. But Saturn is inviting you, and Uranus is like even going beyond that, but I can't go into that too much. But it will invite you to look at things from a different perspective. Is this really what you want? Is this in alignment with where you want your life to go? And the reason why it often turns into a crisis, because there's no space to play around. There's no space to try things out. People want security. People, or not even, maybe you don't even want it, but people around you want you to have that security. But maybe you're craving adventure. Maybe you're craving a different direction. And it's you who can make that decision. You are the one in charge of your life. So if you feel that itch, if you feel that urge, follow that. Trust it. Then when you're 49 to 50, you will have your last quarter square. So this is more about a culmination of all the things that happened. You can still course correct. Like it's not like when you're 49 to 50 that you can't change. But this is a little bit of a harder change because it's the last quarter square. So you're kind of dealing with all of the things that you have dealt with since your first Saturn return around 28, 29 years old. Then when you're 57 to 58, you will have your second Saturn return. And again, this will invite you to look back at the previous 29 years. What have you done? What have you accomplished? Not in an ego way where you're like, oh, look at me, look what I have accomplished. But see what you have done and then look where you are going. Now, in the past, the second Saturn return was around the age people would retire. Nowadays, most people don't retire around 57 to 58. They usually retire around 60 or maybe even later. You would actually see people changing directions. They maybe even sell their business, or they're going into a different business, or they're changing directions completely because they're following their intuition. They're following that inkling that comes from the inside to make a change. Now, the third Saturn return is around 86 to 87. And if you're healthy enough, if you're active enough, that's sometimes a time where people pick up a new hobby, where they start to meet new people, or they actually go more inwards because they're craving just to be by themselves and to explore things on their own instead of being very much out into the world. So these Saturn cycles are very much linked to where you stand in your business. Because Saturn stands for discipline. Saturn allows us to see the systems and the structures. And if you know where you're at, you can also ask yourself specific questions that will help you to get answers. There are no right or wrong answers, but there are ways for you to tune in to in what direction you're going, how you can steer your ship towards what you truly want. Because a strong foundation in your business will help you to ride the waves. If something unexpected happens, if you need to change something, if something shows up, you will be able to change. You will be able to see the value because you have this solid foundation. Now, I'm sorry if I disappointed you that astrology is not a quick fix. I hope it actually inspired you to look deeper into where are you at? What is happening in your life? Look at the 7-year cycle. Each 7 years is an opportunity for you to reflect, to see where you're at, to see what you're doing. It will also help you to create this beautiful foundation that you can build upon. Because we all know if the foundation isn't stable, once you start to build a house, the house will not be stable. And with one big wind, your house will completely collapse. And we don't want that. I want you to have a business that is solid, that can handle the different weather types, can handle the sun, can handle the wind, can handle anything that comes at it. Running your own business really doesn't have to be hard. But you need to know what to focus on and what to do and what questions to ask yourself. Because the better questions you ask, the better your business will be, the better that foundation will be. This is a big part of the work that I do with my clients. To find out where is our Saturn, what is it doing, how can it inform you to make decisions that are perfectly in alignment with what you do, with where you want to go. And building that foundation, that's something that everybody can do. It is something that I do with my clients every single time. We look at where their Saturn is, what is happening, in which house is it, what is it telling you, what are the messages that Saturn is giving you. Again, Saturn is not going to give you any answers. Astrology is not going to give you the answers. It will help you to ask the right questions. It will help you to dive deeper and understanding the different layers. If you, after listening to this podcast, think, well, I would like to see how astrology can actually inform me and my business. And if you're ready to learn more about your Saturn cycles and how you can apply that in your business, how can you save time? How can you work more efficiently and effective? And most importantly, how can you save more time to spend with your family? You can reach out to me. You can either shoot me an email at hello@patriciabanassi.com, or you can search for me on Instagram, Patricia Banassi, and send me a DM, because I love to connect with you. I love to hear what is going on in your business and how you can create more ease and joy and fun in your business. Like I said before, running a business is fun and is joyful. And the more you're not having fun, well, then you clearly haven't cracked the code yet. But we can work on that. We can bring the fun back into your business and the freedom that you crave, and probably the reason why you started your own business, because everything is possible. And now I'm off to drink my kombucha.
Thank you so much for listening to the Astrology as a Strategy podcast again. I love to hear your insight from this episode. Screenshot and tag me on Instagram in your stories or on your feed. You will inspire others to have more joy and ease in their business, and I love to see who's listening. One last thing. I love creating free content for you. Would you like to do something in return? Go to iTunes, subscribe, and leave a review. This helps the podcast to be found more easily so this message can reach more people. Thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you next time.